All right, please be joined this time by Coach Tommy Atha, the new head coach at Cedartown. Coach, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.
Coach, 21 years at Darlington. That's a long time in the current climate. 21 years, man. And then go be an assistant and get a state championship. Now you're back at it. Uh,
Well,
what makes this such a great opportunity?
I'll be honest with you. Cedartown's one of those jobs. Of course, such a tradition-rich program always has been. That's not a recent occurrence. I mean, Cedartown has just been traditionally a great football program, great football community. I grew up competing against Cedartown, and certainly all the years I was at Darlington, Cedartown was really good and continued to be so recent years. So, when the opportunity came along, really just thought at the point I was at, there were very few opportunities that I would be interested in pursuing as a head football coach again. But Cedartown was certainly one of those, and the opportunity came, and a lot of people applied for it, and I was fortunate enough to get selected. So here I am, and fired up to be a Bulldog.
Yeah, coach. Like I said, great job. They've been good. A lot of the people I talked to probably 20 or so new coaches through this time of year doing this. And the vast majority of them are taking over places that, even if they're good programs, they've struggled in recent years, and that's why they got a new coach. And they've got this playbook. You're going to kind of hear a lot of the similar things of what they think is important or what they're going to do. I'm really curious for your answer because it is different, right? You're taking over the team that have been pretty good. So
Yes.
what do you feel like is really important right now to getting the program growing when you're coming in and they've been really good?
I think consistency is extremely important. One of the first things I said, when I interviewed with the administration, then I said this to the coaching staff when I met with them, and I said to the team the first time I talked to them is this: look, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so, there are certain things that obviously are going to be different. We'll be a little bit different from a scheme standpoint on both sides of the ball. There's some things we'll do practice wise that are going to be different. But, I mean, from a culture standpoint, I mean, shoot, it's a great culture. It's in a good place. The kids are bought in to being Cedartown Bulldogs. They're tough kids. They play extremely hard. They love football. And so, I'm just excited to have the opportunity to come in and hopefully maintain that and, continue to, uh, help Cedartown achieve success and keep striving even to get better.
Yeah, coach. And I mean, I think that's a great attitude, by the way, because every place is different and you're going to have to make your imprint on the place. I mean, nobody could ever say you wouldn't, but there does have to also be common sense has to prevail. And if some things are working, you have heard, we've all heard stories of people changing some things maybe unnecessarily, at
Absolutely.
the wrong times. I mean, there's got to be a marriage of their plan and your plan. And I think it's actually always true, but it's probably more true in this situation like you're inheriting now. So, Coach, what do you had a couple years as assistant coach, long time as a head coach. So what did you learn as an assistant coach that you can carry now with you that you maybe didn't know last time you took over, right?
Well, last time I took over, I was what, 32, 33 years old. So at that time, I didn't realize how much I really didn't know. When you're a young coach, especially when you're a young coach aspiring to be a head coach, you got all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I had the great uh, honor to work for a guy named Jerry Sharp for 9 years before I became the head football coach at Darlington. And I was his offense coordinator, and he used to tell me, son, you don't realize what a great job you have, because the job you have is, it's fun for you right now, and there's a lot of things that you don't have to do. And one day, I mean, I always felt like I was stepping into his shoes, but I think having done it for 21 years, we were constantly seeking best practices. You don't ever stop doing that as a coach. I don't care if you're the head coach or an assistant coach, or you've been in place for 1 year or 21 years. You better constantly be seeking better ways to do things. But at the same time, when you've been in one place for 21 years, you get accustomed to doing certain things the same way again and again. So I think, for me, having the opportunity to go work at a couple of other places and work with a couple of other coaches is just kind of, hey, here's some different ways to do things. Here's some, I'll take things that we did. I helped that fall at Model and enjoyed that, and then going over and work for Coach Stevenson at Calhoun. I mean, I learned a lot of things in the past 2 years, in addition to some of the things that I feel like I did know. So hopefully I'll be able to take some of those things and enhance some of the things that I did know, and hopefully be a better football coach as a result of it.
You gain a little different perspective when you're not the last decision maker, you know? And
Yeah.
so, at least for a couple of years, you didn't have to be the last decision maker. And I think that can be powerful, when you get that chance again to make those decisions. But I will tell you this for what it's worth. I saw you guys play at Calhoun on TV early in the year,
Yeah.
and I saw you play in person in the state championship game. And I thought that the team I saw earlier in the year did not look like a state championship team. Although I love Coach Stevenson, I think y'all did a great job. But the progress made was so significant that I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the question, even though we're talking about Cedartown. What did you think was so special or different from that middle point in the season to where you hit the run and you win a state championship? Everybody wants to get there, and in high school, it just don't happen as often as it does in college and NFL, where people get hot at the right time.
Right.
But you guys did. So, what was special about that, or was something you noticed made that team different?
Well, we were an inexperienced football team. I mean, we were splitting time at quarterback, and the guy that ended up, being the best offensive player in the state championship game was he was more recently as a middle school quarterback than he was as a varsity quarterback, and so what we felt like we could do with him or should be doing, and then you know. Inexperienced on the offensive line. I was blessed to be the offensive line coach, and I'll be honest with you, we were not very good early in the year, and it's hard to move football when you're not very good up front. And but those kids bought in and kept working and kept working, and we made some adjustments up front, and we're a much different football team. And the same thing defensively. We had some holes in the secondary, and some guys ended up stepping up, and we adjusted some things there, and we were really hard to move football against once we got into the postseason. So I just think it was really about some kids gaining experience and gelling, and we were able to stay competitive. It was a brutal non-region schedule.
Right.
And, we were able to get into region play and get things rolling and develop confidence. And by the time we got to the playoffs, we were, like you said, a much different football team.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I was impressed with the offensive line. I mean, the quarterback's a great player, no doubt. But I was impressed with the offensive line. I was impressed with the defense. I was just impressed with the effort and maybe just the alignment and assignment stuff was seen much clearer to me. It just was, and you guys look great. I mean, that game in state championship games was just a great performance. Um, so, and sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes you get better, but how often do you see, especially from 2002, you start being a head coach to today? I make this argument so you can either disagree or agree with me that it's harder than it's ever been to keep the kids' attention when they're not winning. So, like in 2002, you might could have taught them because I was around in 2002, coach, and you could say, "Hey, yeah, we're 1-4, but we played a tough schedule. We're going to be all right. We're going to win the rest of them." And I feel like the kids believe that. And now, I think that's why it was even more impressive to me. You guys played a tough schedule. You ran up on some tough teams, and your effort kept getting better, or the execution kept getting better. And I don't see that as often. Am I seeing that wrong, or do you see that as well?
Well, I think each team's different, and I think each group of kids that comes through, and is it harder to keep kids up? Is it harder to keep kids uh, believing that you're going to be successful when you stumble? Several times out of the blocks, maybe so. But I just think that's the big challenge as a
Mhm.
football coach is to get kids to buy into what you're doing and believe, because as well as I do. There's you've seen it time and again. And don't get me wrong, we were a really talented football team at Calhoun this past year, but we beat some really talented teams too. But you know, when you get a bunch of kids that really believe in each other and trust their coaches, that's a big word, trust, that you're doing the right things and we're going to get there, then you have the opportunity for something like last year to happen. Now, if you can't ever get those kids to trust that what you're doing, is in their best interest, and that what you're doing is going to work, and keep fighting the good fight. Good times are ahead, and you'll see some positives. If they don't start seeing that, well, then you
Right, it's gonna
certainly
go the other.
have
Yeah.
that opportunity. Yeah,
The coach is so important on that. Is I guess what I'm saying, that the coach is so important. The whole coaching staff is so important on keeping those kids motivated to execute better, even when they're not seeing that immediate success. Right.
yeah.
So just hats off. I'm just always impressed when I see that. Is what I'm saying. I think it's not as inherent as it used to be, or just naturally happening. Coach, let's talk about Cedartown though. I know you at Cedartown now.
That's right. That's right.
Talk about
We
them.
are.
What what's got to really improve from where you see you are right now to what you want to do in the fall? You guys want to have the season that they've been having and go further. What do you notice so far are things we got to work on?
Well, again, we don't have a whole lot of experience on either side of the football. Cedartown graduated a really, really, really talented group of seniors this past year, and several high profile guys. And so, the biggest thing we've got to do is just what we were just talking about, which is we've got to play as a unit. We've got to execute as a unit. Now, don't get me wrong, we've got some good football players, we are going to have to be a football team that plays extremely hard. We're going to have to be a football team that is extremely detail oriented. We're going to have to be a football team that executes at a high level, because at the level we're playing and in the region we're in, we're not going to go out there and just win on athleticism alone. I mean, you're just setting yourself up for failure. But the flip side is, we really feel like, if, with the kids we have and the players that we have, that if we will go out there and execute and play Cedartown football, which is very physical, a physical brand of football, that absolutely can't change. I mean, if you ask anybody, I talked to, when I was looking at interviewing for the job, and I was very open and honest with Coach Stevenson. Clay and I are really good friends, and talking about it. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you this: years we played them, one thing you could definitely count on is you're going to get your head knocked off, and that still has to be the case. We've got to be an extremely physical football team, offensively and defensively, and again, like I said, execute at a high level."
Yeah, I can second that, Coach. We played Cedartown several times, and some of the better games I remember coaching in were against won some, lost some, but they've always had some physical guys. Always got after it. Always were well coached. Really impressed with the kids over there. Um, you guys do have a tough region. That was my next question to you. So I think there's 4 or 5 really good teams in that region. And so um, what what stands out as something you see as you watch film on the region? I mean, I don't want to ask you about anybody in particular, but just as a whole, what's going to take to win in this region?
Well, I mean, there's like you said, a number of teams that are extremely athletic. There's a number of teams that are going to have more experience than we have coming back. So what is it going to take? Well, it's going to take complete buy-in by our guys, which I feel like we're getting. We had a really good spring. I feel like, it's going to take continued growth in the weight room. That's one area where, I feel like, in a lot of respects, we're ahead of the curve. I feel
Mhm.
like our weight room process and what has been done and continues to be done there is outstanding, and I'm certainly excited about that. But I think, like I said, we've got to be very methodical. We've got to we can't beat ourselves, and that's something that is going to be extremely important. I mean, and that goes back to, like we talked about, 11 guys playing as a unit. How are you methodical on offense? Well, everybody understands their assignment. Everybody does it as hard as they can, and then you try to do it and eliminate as many mental mistakes as possible. And you do the same thing on the other side. You got to have 11 guys rallying to the football. You got to have guys playing great technique, and you got to keep from beating yourself and giving up explosive plays to very athletic teams.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to see is a significant, like misalignments on defense, stuff like that are going to be more costly the deeper the region is, right?
No doubt.
So speaking of that, I'm going to ask about your coaching staff. So tell me who we're going to blame if they misalign on defense.
Yeah.
Who?
Well,
No. Tell me about the coach staff, guys. Guys, maybe you held on to, or new guys you
yeah.
got, or anybody you can tell me about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can tell you about every one of them. I absolutely, like I said, I was talking about the weight room, and one of the things that I'm extremely excited about, and was able to hang on to Mike Worthington.
Yeah.
He's my assistant head coach. He was the assistant head coach. I mean, he what he does, and of course, I have the opportunity to be in there too. Is it's next level. I think from a strength and conditioning standpoint. But he's also my defensive line coach, and was this past year as well. And so, very fortunate to have him in place. And another coach on the other side, well, on the same side of the ball, Joby Burns was a secondary guy last year. He's going to take on the role as a linebackers coach for us this year, which Coach Burns has coached in Alabama for a long time. He's got a wealth of experience and has been a head football coach and been in some really good programs. So certainly blessed to keep him around as well. On the offensive side of the ball, guys coming back. My offensive coordinator was at Cedartown this past year. I think he's a great football mind, extremely hard worker. A guy named Jay Ware. Jay's actually a Coosa grad and local, but has been gone, coached over in Alabama. Most recently, before coming back to Cedartown, he was over at North Oconee. So, obviously extremely good football right there. And Matt Day's another guy that was there last year that we were able to keep, and he'll be coaching what we call our box players, which are our tight ends and sniffer backs, H backs, whatever you want to call those guys. And then, Zach Valentine will be my receivers coach. Zach coached at Pepperell for several years, has been at Cedartown for the last several years, and really high on him. And he'll be coordinating the special teams for us as well. And then was able to hire three new guys. I hired the defense coordinator. I hired Jeremy Green, and Jeremy's a guy cut his teeth as an assistant. Well, actually played and as an assistant under Tommy Welch. So that's a great coaching pedigree in that line, and coached with Jim Kramer was his offense coordinator when Jim was at Snorville, and Jeremy was he was the head coach at Armurchie for several years. So really excited to have him. On the offensive side of the ball, two new guys. I've hired Dustin Powell to be my offensive line coach. And, Dustin was at Rome for a period of time. Most recently, he's offensive line coach at Chattooga last year. And then a younger guy, Hunter Brock, will be in the secondary for us as well, coaching the corners. And he played at Sonoraville. Most recently has been coaching at North Paulding this past year, but excited to get him on staff as well. So, kind of a mix of guys that have been there and bringing in some new guys as well. So I'm excited about
That's good.
that.
You talk about blending that new and old, and I think you're doing that there. And for what it's worth, I have heard nothing but great things about your strength conditioning coach.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that was awesome. I'm glad he was able to hang on. Coach, I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me. I really do. It means a lot. I know you're busy. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll be honest with you. Love anytime we can get out there and talk about Cedartown football.
Yes, sir.
Certainly excited to do it, and appreciate the opportunity to be on here tonight.
Yep. Take care, Coach. Good to talk to you. If I can ever help you, let me know.
Thanks a lot, Chris. See you.
Take care.